We'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jay?
Here.
Brandy? Here. Mark?
Here.
Eric?
Excused. Here. He's here by phone. Sorry about that. Yep.
Jeff?
Here.
Kurt?
Here.
Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that brings us to item 3 on tonight's agenda, approval of minutes, and there's 4 different meeting minutes we are seeking approval for. If there's no amendments to those, I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 20th, Assembly meeting, November 29th, Pool Lighting Bid Appeal Decision meeting minutes, and December 4th, Assembly meeting minutes, December 18th, Assembly meeting minutes. Entertain a motion to approve all 4 of them.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhooter to approve the meeting minutes from those 4 different meetings. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those meeting minutes have been approved. Now we're on to item 4, and that's amendment and approval of this evening's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Morrell. And if there's no amendments, we'll vote to approve the meeting agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to public hearings. 1 public hearing this evening, and that's a public hearing on ordinance 2018-03. And this is an ordinance amending the official zoning map for Service Area 1 of the Petersburg Borough to rezone Lot 10. There's quite a list of us on North Nordic Drive from open space recreational to single family residential. Is there anybody here this evening that wants to participate in this public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Bid awards. There's one item under bid awards this evening, and that's swimming pool lighting replacement project. Directors Hagerman and Thornburg are recommending award of the swimming pool lighting replacement project to Sitka Electric Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $91,400. I'll entertain a motion to approve that expenditure. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Walhooter. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we were going over this, I guess when it was appealed, the question was whether this proposal with Sitka Electric was going to meet the lighting requirements that the bid was asking for. And I just want to know for my own sake, I know it says here, but for the folks at home, this meets all the standards that we were hoping for it to meet?
Deandra, can you answer that?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed there is a little bit, it's a little bit more expensive than what we were talking about by $2,000 roughly, but they're adding more lights and no extra cost for the fixtures and just pay for their labor, so I think it's, I'll be voting in favor of this. Any more discussion? Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, I'll also be voting for this, and just something for the folks listening at home. The overall budget for this work was $120,000, so technically we're coming in under that. Some money is being saved in that regard.
Any other discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Eric?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, the bid award for the swimming pool lighting replacement project passes unanimously. That will be awarded to Sitka Electric. And now it's time for visitors' views related to items on today's agenda. Is there anybody in the audience? How many people are going to want to speak tonight? Okay, I see 7, so I think we'll limit it to 3 minutes because we have a very busy agenda tonight. So who would like to speak first? Okay. Please step to the podium and state your name and who you represent. Debbie, do you have a way to time this, or? Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Go ahead. We're not going to be too, we need to keep some time constraints, so.
My name is Joan Kautzer, and I'm representing myself. I live on Kupernoff, and I'd like to speak to Resolution 2018-01. And this town was built on fishing, and you could argue the entire region was built on fishing. And I could successfully argue that commercial fishing is the most important industry in the state. But it seems like Southeast Conference and our delegation often forget this. This resolution is basically an anti-commercial fishing resolution. The roadless areas in the Tongass are the home of critical riparian habitat for salmon production. Probably the biggest threat to this borough is changing ocean conditions, ocean acidification, and the blob. The old growth stands in the Tongass are rated amongst the world's best for carbon sequestration. So cutting down a bunch of fisheries habitat will deliver the double whammy blow of also adding to ocean acidification. If you want to instruct our lobbyists to do something for crabbers and divers, tell them to work to keep the forest standing to slow down ocean acidification. When the culverts from logging roads were surveyed about a decade ago, an astounding 2,600 or so were blocking fish passage. That problem has not been fully dealt with, not by a long shot. Ironically, there's always money to subsidize building more road and extracting more timber, but there's never an adequate budget to repair the damage and restore the fisheries habitat. In a time of projected poor salmon returns, it makes no sense whatsoever to degrade the spawning habitat. The only ecosystems that have a chance of surviving climate change are the intact ones. Being as so, much of the Tongass has been fragmented already, and it only increases the importance of our roadless areas. Only resilient ecosystems can hold up in major weather events. Where hillsides have been cut, high winds and excessively wet weather will continue to cause huge blowdowns and mudslides. This resolution is also anti-subsistence. Mitkoff Island is a good example of a place with plenty of roads but not many deer. The deer populations on POW are crashing thanks to thousands of miles of logging roads and fragmented habitat. The most reliable places to hunt are not roaded. This resolution is also anti-tourism. Nobody comes up here to see chewed up landscapes. They come up here to see the wild places, view old growth dependent wildlife, and to catch a wild fish. Every logged acre is an acre taken from the sustainable visitor industry. Finally, it's everybody's knee-jerk reaction to, quote, support the timber industry, but stop and think about what this timber industry in Southeast really is. Do you really support round log exports? Do you really support an industry that exploits fisheries habitat, subsistence, and erodes tourism, but employs less than 1% of the region's population? 99% of us are forest dependent, but this is never reflected in Southeast Conference's positions or supported by our delegation. I hope this council will stand up for fishing, subsistence, and tourism and vote this resolution down.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Yes, we could deed every single stand of old growth over to the round log exporters, and it still would never be enough. They have no interest in ever switching to young growth. The roadless areas of the Tongass are the gift we leave to our children and our children's children. Please don't vote to rob the future. This resolution is selfish and short-sighted. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Okay. Please come to the podium, state your name, who you represent. I'll try to get the timer before the alarm goes off. That's kind of rude, but I'll raise my hand, and if you'll try to cut it off shortly after I get your attention, I'd appreciate it.
First, I want to protest against a short notice of this resolution. I heard about it this morning, laying in bed, listening to radio, and I thought, why didn't something of this importance, like it's some kind of you-hoo thing, it's ridiculous that it's treated in this fashion. This is literally cutting the nose off our faces.
Can you get on with your testimony, please?
I'd love to.
Thank you.
Cutting the nose off our face to spite someone else. We're in a global problem here, and what Roadless does is, it's not just us. It's all over the world. Didn't you listen to the news today? 4 degrees highest, the highest rise in temperature, the guy said, ever on Alaska News Nightly tonight. This gentleman, Edward O. Wilson, 85-year-old biologist, he's pretty worried about the future of the world we're leaving to our children. He says, for the first time in history, a conviction has developed among those who can actually think more than a decade ahead that we are playing a global endgame. Humanity's grasp on the planet is not strong. It is growing weaker. Our population is too large for safety and comfort. Fresh water is growing short. The atmosphere and the seas are increasingly polluted as a result of what has transpired on the land. The climate is changing in ways unfavorable to life, except for microbes, jellyfish, and fungi. For species, it is already fatal. Because the problems created by humanity are global and progressive, because the prospect of a point of no return is fast approaching, these problems can't be solved piecemeal. There is just so much water left for fracking, so much rainforest cover available for soybeans, palm oil, or clear cutting, so much room left in the atmosphere to store excess carbon. Meanwhile, we thrash about, appallingly led, with no particular goal in mind other than economic growth, unfettered consumption, good health, and personal happiness. The impact on the rest of the biosphere is everywhere negative, and the environment is becoming unstable and less pleasant, and our long-term futures less certain. You know, I love passing the drugstore and seeing what new baby's been born. Quite often there's a beautiful picture of an innocent, hopeful face, seeing that there's some place in this world for them. These babies that are born and coming back to this town, they have a very good chance of living to the year 2100. Our terms on this earth will be long over by the time these babies' lives come into full fruition. We are really, this is a thoughtless, short-sighted, and a deliberately harmful action to pass this resolution. I really would urge the council not to take this measure to please our misguided senator in Washington, D.C. The opening of ANWR itself is another indication.
Your 3 minutes, please.
We don't need more oil and carbon in the atmosphere, and we don't need to continue doing to the earth what we've been doing to it.
Can you please wrap up your testimony, please?
And by not passing this resolution, that would be a good first step for this local body. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to testify? I know there is views related to items on today's agenda. Steve? Please state your name and who you represent.
Yeah, my name's Steve Burrell, Resolution 2018-01. All I hear is when you put the roadless rule is pretty much logging, and the infrastructure in logging in southeast Alaska is gone and has been gone for quite some time. There's a little mill in Craig, and they are on the radio every other year about how they can't even get enough wood to run. So that's not, so to me, logging is not even in the picture anymore. But what bothers me is for instance, the ferry system. We all know what's happening with it. We can't even get from Petersburg to Prince Rupert. We have to take a ferry from Petersburg to Seattle for about $4,000 round trip if you have a full-size vehicle. No one even mentions anything about what the cost of living here in Petersburg is just from the freight alone. Go up and buy a gallon of milk. That should tell you right there. We need to be able to build roads in southeast Alaska. The Bradfield Canal Road, no one's looked at that in years. To be able to get in and out of the middle of southeast. When the ferry system goes down, which it could, we have no way in or out of here unless you go on the barge. Put your rig on the barge. So I want you to support, for the wilderness rule. I mean, we need to be able to build roads here. Here in South, we're not going to save the world here in Southeast. I mean, that's what I just heard here. We're going to save, if you don't do this, the world's coming to an end. That's not the case. We need to take care of us that live here and make it affordable to live here. Because it's getting to be where it's not. You're already going to try to take the tax away from the old folks and charge them for that. But nobody thinks about going after maybe getting another way to get freight in and out of southeast Alaska, get fresh fish out of Petersburg, off the Prince of Wales Island. So these are some other things that we should be looking at too. So anyways, that's all I got to say about it. And I think that we need to be able to have a road.
Okay, who would like to testify next? Dave, you had your hand up. You want to?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. My name is David Beebe. I'm representing myself, and I'm a 30-plus year resident and commercial fisherman of Petersburg and Kupreanof. I'm not the sharpest pencil in the pack, but fortunately I figured out pretty quickly I couldn't survive as a fisherman and a small boat owner, and that unless I understood that no one was going to bail me out when systems I depended on stopped working, or the systems that I depended on to stay afloat stopped working. I found out the expensive way, that I couldn't survive by luck, and I couldn't survive as a small businessman by throwing money at the effects of a problem instead of understanding what caused them. I'm asking you to apply the same problem-solving strategy here as it relates to Resolution 2018-01. This resolution is based upon a failed economic strategy that depends upon and puts our fates at the mercy of the market. This plan, according to the state legislature's wisdom, violated all of the basic fiduciary obligations and responsibilities to the execution of the social contract. When we find ourselves with a failed economic policy, we need to understand that politics, like democracy, can't be reduced to a vote between two wolves and a lamb as to what they're going to have for supper. And that's precisely what is going on with the religious responsibility to the social contract. If we don't abide by this notion of we are expecting our government to solve its economic problems, we cannot expect those problems to be solved by using the same economic plan that got us into this mess. It's up to us to come up with alternative notions I'm reminded, after having been present at the Alaska Municipal League, Kathy Wasserman being so angry after having heard that the state legislature had put all of the municipalities out on a limb and were busy cutting that limb off the trunk. And it was very clear that they expected to do nothing more than shift the costs to municipalities and expect them to somehow come up with an answer to the problem that they created themselves. So please, keep in mind that a resolution that is generated out of the Southeast Conference has impacts that must be involving alternatives and not the same problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beebe. Does anybody else in the room want to testify under visitors' views related to items on the agenda? Okay, you'll be next, Camp Rose.
Fine. I'm Chelsea Tremblay. I'm here representing myself, and I didn't really have anything prepared. I didn't really know this was going on, but I'm here to talk about the roadless rule and hope that we don't support this resolution asking for it to be ended. As someone who is majorly employed through the tourism industry and participates in fishing as a person who needs affordable access to protein, I don't see how this is a policy that would make sense for 50, 100, 200 years from now in Southeast Alaska. What the Southeast Conference should be focusing on is how to make the ferries run better and faster and more affordable for all Southeast residents. I don't see how bringing more roads to an archipelago make a lot of sense. So I hope you vote with the future in mind and the long-term vision for Southeast, which includes tourism and keeping a healthy fisheries in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to testify next? Rose, you had your hand up?
Hello, my name is Roseanne Dunham. I'm not here to talk about the roadless ordinance. I want to talk about the proposed ordinance for the senior citizen exemption, the senior citizen fee. First, I have to say I'm not a senior citizen yet. I might look like one, but I'm not. And so I'm not exempt from paying sales tax. So I just have an opinion on what I read in the paper and then the ordinance that's proposed. So the issue is a $60 processing, issuing, and monitoring cost. You're going to get your costs back. That's like $120 for a family of two, $60 per person. And I want to know where you came up with that number. Because I don't think in the 3 business days since I read about this in the paper that you've had an actual opportunity to do a cost analysis on what it really does cost the city to take care of these senior exemption cards. What do you have, 500, 800? I mean, I have no idea. But it doesn't sound like a big enough deal if you are trying to save money and recoup costs to do this. So the borough creates its own costs anyway. I mean, you're the ones that say, hey, we have to have a new card every year. We're going to monitor these people. We got to issue this stuff. Well, I have to tell you, I collect sales tax. I do a lot of monitoring for the city already. And why do you have to send them out every year? It's not like people are getting younger every year, folks. And so I'm just saying, let's just think about the reality of this. If it's 500 people, we're talking $30,000. What is that? One person's annual wage? I don't want to get nasty, but I bet you paid 5 times that to take the corner off a building that's been sitting there for 75 years. My other question is, where did you get the $20,000 income amount for the limit? Because the Alaska, let me get the right word, the Alaska poverty level for 2 people is higher than $20,000. So it just doesn't make any sense. And how are you going to prove what their income is? If somebody is only making $20,000 for a household, they aren't filing federal income tax, people. They don't need to. So I guess if we are concerned about the costs of this, and we think that we can recoup it by charging people $60 a year, and that those costs are, and I'm going to quote the paper here, I know, I'm quoting the paper here, that we can be bankrupting the city. If that's a fact, we need to vote no on this and look at a totally different direction for saving money and getting an income stream into the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Rose. Anybody else in the audience who would like to express their views related to items on this evening's agenda? Mark?
Well, my name is Marge Oinas, and it's very difficult for me to hear what anybody is saying sitting in the audience. I don't know if there's a way to turn things up, but I can't hear. I did hear a little bit of Rose's, and I thought, well, after what she said, I don't have to say anything. But I'm here as an elderly person. I've been here for 50 years, accumulated, so I fit in the papers. If anyone has been here 50 years, they might be fit to have tax exemption as a retired person. I make $14,400 a year with Social Security. That's what I live on. And if I didn't own the home that I live in because my folks gave it to me, it'd be very hard to make it on, what is it, I don't know, like something like $1,400 a month. I don't know how anybody could do it. I don't have to pay rent. And so for me, it's like I have it made in the shade. So I'm very grateful for the income tax exemption that I have from the city. I could afford to pay $50 a year to keep that, but I'd rather not have to. I know that this started in, 1980, I think Lo said in the paper, and I was wondering why it was started in the first place. Does anybody know?
I don't have an answer to that question.
I believe it was to encourage low-income retirees to stay here instead of moving somewhere.
Oh, encourage the people to stay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And was it decided by the council? We don't know.
I think it was put in place by a council. It wasn't a vote.
It wasn't voted on.
To take it away, it has to go to a vote of the public. It has to be on the ballot.
Oh, I see.
And Marge, I think if this ordinance, if it passes, this is the first reading, there is a line in here, a part in the ordinance that says if you make under $20,000, you don't have to pay for the card fee.
Right.
So that you would be excluded if.
I think I just read on the back of something that something that says how you're going to check to make sure that this is really happening. Is somebody going to, do the police have to do something, how are you going to know if we're honest people or not?
May I answer that for you, Marge?
Yeah.
You would be signing an affidavit attesting that you make under that. It's more or less an honor system in that regard, saying that you swear that is what your income is less than. Just you saying so, more or less, and signing. Am I getting that right, Jody? Thank you.
It seems to me that if we're going to have a policy, that you should have a way of, like, if I have to come in and show you that my Social Security income is $400, I think that's a fair way to do it. But just to assume that we're all honest, I don't know that we, I think you do have to cover that. I hope that you don't charge anything, but if you do, I can afford 50.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like you'd have to pay. Thank you for your testimony, Marge. Anybody else in the audience with views related to items on tonight's agenda? Rolly?
My name is David Whiteborn. I'm a business owner in town. Born, raised here, stayed here. I've been here for 68 years. I hope you guys support this roadless thing and send the resolution back there. Like Mr. Bell says, logging is history in this community, and it is on Prince of Wales. But mining isn't, and neither is hydropower. And we're looking for hydropower. And in order to build roads into someplace with the roadless plan, you may not build road into hydropower. And you may not be able to build roads to a grid system to bring hydropower out to the grid system. So I would hope that you guys would support this and, get rid of the roadless plan and go back to putting some roads in that we do need for some of this stuff. And the other subject is, like Marge is saying, some of these older people that can't afford to pay sales tax. And I would be willing to give you my cards back if you guys wanted to take a 6% cut across the entire board for our city borough. And so that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Any other visitors with views related to items on today's agenda? Okay. Thanks, everybody, for your testimonies.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
It's all right.
I just pulled it out so I can follow. All right,
No problem.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a letter from Rebecca Knight. Rebecca Knight's statement of opposition to Petersburg Borough Resolution 2018-1 regarding the roadless rule exemption to Alaska National Forests. Alaska's national forests should not be exempt from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's roadless rule, first issued in 2001. Local, regional, statewide, and national debate has been ongoing during the past 16 years, yet the rule has survived countless challenges in the courts. Quote, in 2011, a federal court tossed the Tongass exemption. Later, an appeals court reversed the decision. Then, a full en banc panel of that appeals court reversed it again. The Tongass ultimately had to abide by the roadless rule. Last fall, the district court judge held that line, saying the rule stands and the USDA did not violate any laws in crafting it. End quote. That was quoted from the Alaska Dispatch News. Moreover, the rule has survived the court of public opinion by the American people who have repeatedly spoken in overwhelming support of it. It is inconceivable that your body would advise that the rule be abandoned with a quickly passed resolution tonight, along with the historic legal rulings and the sentiment of the American people. It is a case of beating a dead horse over and over and is a monumental waste of time and a waste of our meager state coffers. In the glaring absence of an in-depth debate tonight, I request that you consider the attached 2009 letter in support of the roadless rule by a group of renowned scientists. It distills the plethora of scientific evidence that demonstrates that the rule is in the best interests of all Americans and the world. Please reject Petersburg Borough Resolution 2018-1. Sincerely, Rebecca Knight.
Thank you, Debbie. So is there anybody that would like to speak on views related to tonight's agenda? I think that was the last comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak on views unrelated to any of the items on tonight's agenda? Anything that we're not supposed to talk about tonight? Seeing none.
Mr. Mayor? So Karen, did you want to talk?
Can I talk when you get to the Mountain View Manor?
You know, it'd be better if you did it now. If you could do it now, please. Yeah, that could be quite a while. Then this is the part of the meeting where a person should testify to, or should speak. Please, if you do it now, it makes it cleaner for me anyway. Thanks, Jeff, for recognizing Karen. I figured that's why you were here. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Mountain View Manor in the past, their food service program has, thank you, has requested funds from the city for the fiscal year from June until the next June. And last year, I was out of town. I think we were supposed to be requesting in March. Was that when you were doing the budget work?
I can't recall.
Okay. But I know I was out of town, and Sammy Parker is our accountant, and she has asked for it, requested in the past, and she didn't think we would need it. She knows money's tight. She didn't think we need it. But, and we actually were doing really pretty well until the last few months. November, of course, with people having the flu and stuff, November, December, the income has been down more. That's more like the reflection of the numbers that I had given in my letter to Mr. Giesbrecht. Before that, the numbers were up higher in the 30s and the 40s. So it's kind of a combination of food prices are getting high. We feel like we've done a fairly good job. The last half of 2017, we spent $10,796 on food for those 6 months. It served 2,193 people, and so the meal cost per person was $4.92. And we request a $5 donation. Our grant money is based that way, that if people absolutely can't pay, we don't have to say, you can't eat. So if they put in $1 or $2, that's okay. So with the economy also being the way it is, we have not had the income from them that has been in the past. And I know that people feel guilty if they can't pay, but some people are taking advantage of it, of the program. And there's more people that should be taking advantage. So, anyway, so we come to January, and we are basically running out of money from what we would have had before. We got less grant money also because our numbers were down. And so, we used to do the assisted living also, and we had to separate from them because they had 17 people with special needs. And it's really hard to cook dinner for 40, 45 people and she goes like low salt for almost everybody. But when you get into this person can't eat wheat, this one can't eat dairy, you have a lot of problems. So trying to sort out 17 people was difficult. So that's another reason. We also had an unforeseen expense. The state required all nonprofits to have a yearly financial review, so it's not a total audit, it's a partial audit, and that costs us $2,100. So that was another cost that we had. So that's why we're asking $4,000 for to help us get through till our grant money comes in February.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Okay, is there anybody in the audience with views unrelated to items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, excuse me, we'll move to the next thing on the agenda, board, commission, and committee reports. We have a report from the Petersburg Medical Center. We have an update from Liz Woodyard.
Good evening. My name is Liz Woodyard. I'm the CEO at Petersburg Medical Center. Just wanted to give an update of what's been going on at the hospital. And our kitchen is finally done, and it looks really nice, and so please come over and look at it. And the dietary department is glad to be back in the hospital, and thanks to Ocean Beauty for letting us lease their kitchen during the last months, and the project came in on budget, so we're happy about that. I will be retiring at the end of June, and so we have a hiring committee to start the process for the next CEO, and they've gotten feedback from staff and some community members regarding challenges the hospital may be facing in the next few years, services the hospital should offer, and crucial qualities the next CEO needs in facing the challenges that lie ahead. The application period for the position will close at the end of January. One of our great physicians, Dr. Sargent, will be leaving at the beginning of March, so we are in the process for recruiting another family physician. Tara Burns, our new occupational therapist, hopes to start at the end of February. She's just waiting for her license. We're also recruiting for ultrasound, x-ray tech, CNAs, medical assistants, and RNs. And with the addition of Jim Roberts, who's here, thanks Jim, as our newest board member, we now have a full hospital board, so that's pretty exciting news for us. And our next board meeting is January 25th at 5 p.m. The tentative date for the health fair will be April 14th. And the hospital foundation, if you're not aware of the hospital foundation, it is separate from the hospital. It's 501c3. We raise money through the foundation for various equipment needs and scholarships, and the hospital foundation awarded a scholarship to Caitlin DeRoss for continuing her education, so she'll be wound care certified. We're almost ready for the new DEXA scanner, which will be up in the x-ray department. We're hoping to start that new service in February. This unit is designed to measure bone density, which determines the risk for bone loss or osteoporosis. So that'll be a nice service that we'll be able to offer. Cash continues to be steady. We're holding our own. December, of course, was a high revenue month. As you remember, we had so many people with the flu. We had an 86% over budget in the inpatient department for December. So the staff was very busy with people coming in with the flu. Our investment income is up, and it pretty much covered the cost of the kitchen and interest, so that was good. And I think that's about all I'd like to talk about. Answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from the assembly for Liz? Thank you, Liz.
Thanks for the opportunity to come.
Yeah. Okay, no items on the consent agenda this evening. Report of other officers, there are none. Brings us to the mayor's report. Pretty light report. Municipal Land Selection Committee, with Governor Walker's signature on Senate Bill 28, municipal land selections for Petersburg. Petersburg is now entitled to additional lands within our borough. The committee met last Friday, and I was talking to Liz today, and they will have at our next meeting a recommendation. They've narrowed it down to the land they think we should select, so we will move forward from there. Senator Stedman, when he was here, recommended we I don't know if you want to call it apply pressure, but keep on DNR, because they're not going to be the ones trying to they won't be driving the boat to transfer the land, so we have to keep on them, and so hopefully that will happen. We wanted to talk about the proposed land trade with Petro 49, I guess it's called now, and the Borough Harbor Department have entertained the idea of trading land for various reasons, one of which would be that the Harbor Department could utilize an old Petro building as a maintenance shop, and I'm requesting that the Harbor Board research the cost involved in the land trade. I've heard various numbers from the Harbor Department, and I've talked to a few of the staff in the finance. So I'd like them to get involved in that, give us the accurate numbers, the loss of property tax, loss of lease revenue, and another thing I'd like them to look into is the cost to make the building proposed for the maintenance shop usable to the standard, to what they're looking for. I know right now the building, if you look at it, you can't drive a vehicle into the building. It's got a loading dock, so I don't know if that would meet their needs. So if there's going to be any future costs associated with it, I'd like them to bring that to the assembly and make a recommendation. We need to reschedule the February 20th assembly meeting. I will be out of town on the 20th. We can still have it on the 20th if you guys want to have the meeting when I'm gone. That's fine with me. Talk to the clerk about it. February 16th, which is a Friday, could work, but I don't know if that works for other people, or February the 26th. There are regular meetings on February 5th and March 5th. So the 16th would actually put the timing more equal between meetings instead of having one meeting on the 26th and another one on the 5th a week later. So it's nice to have them staggered. Any suggestions from the Assembly? Member Strand.
I would like to leave it on the 20th. We have a vice mayor, so, and maybe you could call in if there's something that you're concerned about.
Okay, Member Walter?
I'm probably going to be out on the Tanner grounds on that date, on the 20th and the 16th, and I won't be in town on the 26th, so I'm out.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
I'm out.
So, yeah, we have to consider 4 people present for a quorum.
I will call in if I can, though.
So, Member Mucci, you going to be in town?
Hard to say. Just schedule the meeting, and if I'm here, I'll do my best to be here.
If not, we'll cancel it.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Jay, Member Stan, Gregory, you'll be in town, do you think?
I'm looking at the calendar here. Bear with me for a moment, Mr.
Sure,
Mayor.
we got lots of time.
Yes, we do. I'm fairly ambivalent. Either the 20th or the 26th would work fine for me. The 16th, no good, but 20th or 26th, I don't have a preference.
Okay.
Either one works for me.
You'll be in town? Eric, are you hearing this conversation?
Yeah, the 16th is bad, but either the 20th or the 26th would work.
Okay, let's just leave it on the 20th and see what happens. Make it easy. Okay, one other thing on the mayor's report is our trip to Washington, D.C. The borough lobbyist Brad Gilman has had meetings set up for myself and the manager to visit with the Coast Guard, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the State Department, Office of Canadian Affairs about trans-river boundary issues, the Alaska Governor's Office. That's the first day, and then Senator Murkowski, Sullivan, Congressman Young. That's so far, and we have a day in case anything else comes up. And that's it. So, Steve, manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Power and Light Superintendent search team, we completed reviewing the candidates that we had for the position and have decided to re-advertise for the position. All internal and external applicants have been notified. Likely be about 45 days before we receive additional applicants and review their qualifications. So that's where we stand at the moment. I held the first of 3 community meetings to discuss ways in which the borough can decrease costs or increase revenue. We had about 12 to 14 people that attended the meeting, and that's excluding department heads. And the borough received approximately 50 comments, many of them coming in through email. So our next scheduled meeting there is on this subject is January 18th, so this week, from 4 to 6 here in the Assembly Chambers. When we finish up the entire process after the 3rd meeting, which is scheduled for January 27th, I will consolidate all the comments received along with any emailed comments and then prepare a basic summary of the issues for the Assembly, and then we can so they can decide how we want to go from there, if you want to prioritize a few or look through them. Again, the next meetings are January 18th from 4 to 6, that's this week, and then the final meeting on January 27th from 11 to 1, that's a Saturday. Try to split them up and put them on different times and dates, so hopefully it gives everybody a chance to come. I wanted to say thanks to Carl and Liz. The borough provided background and rough cost estimates for the Petersburg Access Road project. This has been provided to our DC lobbyist for inclusion in the trip memo under the infrastructure category. With mixed emotions, I want to announce the pending retirement of our Chief of Police, Kelly Swihart, and our Deputy Clerk, Mindy Swihart. His family and they will be leaving Petersburg after June 30th of this year for the next stage of their lives closer to family in Alabama. We will miss Kelly, Mindy, Anna, Morgan, Sam, and the boys, but we know how important being close to their family is to them. Please take the time to thank Mindy and Kelly for their exemplary service to our community and wish them well in the future. With the retirement of Chief Swihart, the borough will be starting a search for our next Chief of Police. I am proposing a search limited to Alaskan-based candidates with current Alaska Police certification. Kelly will be helping us identify qualified candidates, and we hope to get them in place prior to Kelly departing this summer. Debbie, Mindy, and I will be reviewing the deputy clerk's job description as part of our process to make sure the job description matches up with our current needs in the borough. And to be honest with you, it's kind of going back and forth a little bit. We're going to look at, we have some needs in the HR area. At the same time, that gets really expensive to hit all of those hot button items that we would need. So we're going to have that conversation to make sure we get the job description correct as far as what we need internally and what we can afford, and then get that in place before we start recruiting. Again, as you heard me mention, salary is a concern. If we go too hard and heavy on HR experience, the salary tends to go up pretty quick, and we don't have that budgeted. So, with 3 department head positions open, the electric superintendent, the police chief, and the deputy clerk, Debbie and I will need to understand if the assembly will want an active role in the recruitment process like we've done with the electrical superintendent. We would suggest the assembly consider discussing this at a future meeting so staff can lay out the process that meets with your approval. We can do it any number of ways. I just kind of need to know how you want to do it. And that's it, unless you have questions.
Any questions of the manager? Member Lucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had on the agenda for later on tonight talking about the Public Safety Advisory Board, and when I put this on the agenda a couple weeks ago, my intent was kind of to get a discussion going about whether or not we wanted to disband the Public Safety Advisory Board. They hadn't met since August in 2015. And this might be a good opportunity for the Public Safety Advisory Board to help Steve go through the application process or the recruitment process, whatever you want to call it. Many years ago when I was on the Parks and Recreation Board, we handled things similar to that. We helped the department head or whoever, the city manager, and I think it would be a real good thing for the Public Safety Advisory Board, but we can certainly talk about that later. Yep.
Okay. We will add this as a discussion item. Maybe can we put it on the next agenda to get the...
It would be helpful if there's room on the agenda for it. The earlier we know, the easier it is for us to adjust and put something in place.
Well, maybe it should be someplace where the assembly could take action on it then other than a discussion item, so that would be better. Any other questions of the manager? Okay, that moves us on to unfinished business, and there's one ordinance for second reading. That's ordinance 2018-03. That's an ordinance amending the official zoning map for service area 1 of the Petersburg Borough from open space recreational to single-family residential. And that lot is on North Nordic before you go around Powellery Point, right by the Ray Olson's house. I could read the whole paragraph and a half with a lot description, but I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So move.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Morrow to adopt ordinance 2018-03 in its second reading. Is there any discussion by the Assembly? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Eric?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes. Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2018-03 passes unanimously in its second reading. The next item under unfinished business is item 18-012, fiscal year 2019 capital projects list. Senator Stebbin recently visited Petersburg and requested the borough add non-capital priorities related to state funding on the 2019 capital projects list. That was approved by the Assembly at the January 2nd, 2018 meeting. Manager Giesbrick has added 6 non-capital issues for the Assembly to approve. They're all the way from revenue sharing to school maintenance bonds, and it makes sense to me. So we need a motion to approve this to be added to our capital project list to send to the state. I'll entertain that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Strand to approve the expansion, I guess you'd call it, of the 2019 capital projects list. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Brandy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, we could add that to the list. Next item, C, under unfinished business, this is Assembly Member Stanton Gregor requested this agenda item to provide opportunity for the Assembly to give direction to Manager Giesbrick regarding the ongoing recruitment of an electric utility superintendent. And without any details, Member Stanton Gregor?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For those of you who are listening to the radio today, earlier I spoke a little bit about this. I was maybe concerned during our first round of recruiting that we didn't get a lot of viable candidates. Steve, a quick question for you. If I'm correct, we have 3 current applicants that have come in?
Correct. As of this afternoon,
Sure.
we received 3 applicants, all of which had previously applied and been turned down by the screening group.
Understood. And the concern I had is that the salary range we have set out fits our budget really well, but my concern is that it will not attract a candidate that's viable for us. We could up it to like 150, 160, something like that, and get someone who, fits more the market value of down south, but then I think we're paying disproportionately where a department head would be making more than the borough manager, and it seems a bit silly to me. Consequently, though, what I would propose, and like to hear from the Assembly on it, was that we instruct the borough manager and the borough clerk to revise the 5 ordinances that would be needed for creating a utility director position that we discussed earlier this year, with Carl Hagerman, if he was so inclined, to be the utility director responsible for power and light, water and wastewater, with Chris Cotta becoming the new public works director responsible for motor pool, sanitation and public works, streets and such, with the previous discussed salaries that were mentioned at that time. And I like that plan a lot for several reasons. One is in year 1, and Steve, please check me if I'm wrong at any point in numbers, we'd save approximately $150K in salary, benefits, and relocation costs the first year. And subsequent years would be an annual savings of $116,000-ish, of course. That's one reason. I like the added savings on a 5-year plan. That's $580,000 saved for that fund. It's a lot of money, and we need a lot of money right now. Secondly, Carl's been doing this job for 6 months, and to the best of my knowledge, it's been going quite well. One thing I've been impressed with Manager Hagerman is that he's excited for it. He likes new challenges and has been thriving in that setting. And we've got somebody, this isn't some situation where like, okay, well, he's here, this will work. No, we have somebody who's really interested in getting better at this and has shown skill already. And I think it's worth us considering giving the manager and clerk direction to move forward that way. I'd like to hear from the rest of the crew on that, please.
Any other discussion? Member Strand.
I'm good with that plan, the reorganization that we'd talked about in the past. It seems like it's doing well. Carl has excellent support and assistance from Scott, and it seems to be working. I think we should continue.
Member Merle.
I am, as we all know, against this plan. We just spent $60,000 alone on a 1 week of labor because we couldn't do a job that we were going to do in-house. I don't see how this is going to save us any money to have somebody in there that doesn't have the experience and qualifications. I think there's other ways to save money. And again, this is coming out of the enterprise fund, which has plenty of money. This isn't coming out of the general fund, which is hurting. And that's my 2 cents.
Any other discussion on Member Stanton Gregor's idea?
Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, I always get uncomfortable when I'm, as an assembly member, and I'm talking about this person doing this job and this person doing that job. And as far as I'm concerned, it's up to us to give direction to the city manager to see how this is all going to work. And I would certainly like to hear from Steve to see if he had personnel in place that could make this transition work. I mean, we could certainly try this plan for 6 months to see if it will work. If it doesn't work, we can certainly go back out and try and find a candidate who is interested in coming here. We've all been involved in hiring processes for either city managers or this person and that, and they might like Petersburg on a nice sunny day and stuff, and it's the most beautiful place to live in the world. But if your spouse isn't happy or the job just doesn't turn out to be as cool as you thought it was, things go south and then we're out. And I think we have personnel in place who could probably do the job if the city manager thought that could happen. But I'd like to hear some of Steve's thoughts. What do you think?
Steve, Mayor, this was my proposal back in day one, and I haven't really changed my opinion. With respect to the assembly members, I have utmost confidence in the Power and Light crew as well as Carl's ability. I think I've said this before, so it's not a surprise. I don't need expertise. We've got a lot of that. What I need is the ability to manage staff and the budget and the projects that unfortunately have kind of gathered dust for a while in the Power and Light area. In this period that the Assembly's been discussing this and talking about it, we've gotten several projects that have sat and languished for quite a while, often moving, and others are in the pipeline. And that's super valuable. It's great for the staff in Power Light to see these things actually getting done, and things that have been on their mind for a while. And I think in Carl, you've got somebody that's from here, that you have less risk of leaving. And as Jay said, I mean, he's enthusiastic. I think if he still wants the job, I should have hesitated that way. I think he'd do a very good job at it. Are we going to need outside expertise at times? You bet. But we needed that when the former superintendent was here with an electrical engineering degree. So, we've been paying outside consultant on a contract basis for many years with an electrical engineer on staff. So I don't think that's a consideration I'm necessarily worried about. I am very worried about, managing that department like we're doing now in the long term. We're asking a lot of Scott, and he's doing a very good job. But, basically that means we're short, in the lineman area, because Scott was definitely a working foreman. And right now he doesn't have the opportunity to do that. So I guess what I'm saying is, I made the proposal originally for a reason. I still stand behind that. I believe it would be successful. But I am subject to what the Assembly wants done, and it'd be helpful for the Assembly to kind of weigh in on a basis where we can get moving and get some of these things done and establish leadership for Power and Light. They deserve it. getting somebody in there on a permanent basis and going on from there. So.
Member Waller?
I kind of waffle back and forth here, but, after talking today with different members here that are involved in this, I have all the confidence that we have the right linemen, we have the right, mechanic, we have the right people for doing the switches and stuff. Carl's not going to have his finger on the button. He's the one that's just going to help manage the department there. So I think, we all talk about the state, doing what's right and, cutting the budget and let's get it, balance it and let's try to figure out how to reduce costs and stuff. And I think this is an excellent idea to start. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? We drop back in the punt, a year from now or 2 years from now and it doesn't seem like it's working. I mean, they already had 6 months to see how this worked. We didn't have any failures when we should have had failures. So I think it's worth a try. So I'm going to be voting, to direct you to look into that and see if it's a workable situation or not.
Any other comments or additions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I also I feel that Carl's done a fantastic job in the role, and I've only heard great things about how he's helped lead that department. Working with Scott, I think, has been beneficial for the borough during the interim period, but I'm in full support of Mr. Hageman being considered for the utility director. And just like Jay mentioned, with $150,000 savings the initial year, including the recruitment process, and then there are $116,000 annually thereafter, it seems that the borough couldn't have a better plan to be able to save 6 figures. So I will be voting for this.
Any other discussion? Member Stanton Gregory?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief addition is, I guess one other reason why I really feel strongly about this is, so far we've had 6 months worth of staff continuity with Scott, Carl, and everyone working together, and by all accounts it's going well. There hasn't been, the department's working well together right now. Everyone is functioning well as a team unit, and it struck me why deviate from that right now. It makes a lot of sense. That was all.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Steve, if you were tasked with seeing how this would work, would the idea be to have Scott be a general foreman, or what are you thinking here?
Well, Scott would step back to his role as the line foreman. And Carl would, the position, as I originally proposed, it was the utility director is responsible for the operation at Power and Light and water, wastewater. And so it'd be full responsibility, including budget and day-to-day management. So, and the other piece of that was Assistant Public Works Director Kata would step up to a position running sanitation, motor pool, and streets, and we would eliminate the Assistant Public Works Director position. So when you talk about could we go backwards in a year if it didn't work, the answer is yes, because we're not necessarily adding any people. I hate to do that to staff. I mean, that would be clearly a decision that the Assembly, I suppose, could make, but it's always better for a department to have consistent leadership and know that the boss is going to be the boss for a while and not be changed at the next assembly meeting. But I guess that's kind of the world we live in.
Thank you.
Any other comments before I chime in? I'm not in favor of this. Couple reasons why. Everybody says things are going along well, and they are. We haven't had any outages. You have to realize over the last number of years we've been tuning up our infrastructure just like we plan on moving forward and doing. So I know there's still outages. I noticed one power fluctuation during the holidays, but the lights didn't go totally out. I think there's other ways to possibly save the money. We're talking about restructuring the departments, but I guess if we move forward with this, we could do that when we draft the ordinances that give the descriptions for job job descriptions, I guess, for utility directors. We are, and I remember our manager Giesbrecht mentioned about some of the projects that we've got accomplished since we've had the structure we have in place with Mr. Hageman being the manager over there and Scott being the foreman, superintendent, I guess, temporary superintendent. But those plans, I think, just started getting funding approval within the last 6 months, or maybe it's been a little bit longer than that, but to spend the reserves in Power and Light to start moving forward with these projects. And one of them we're going to be talking about later is potential for the rewind at the Crystal Lake Hydro project. I still don't think, unless we change job descriptions, like I said, when this first came to the Assembly back in the spring, unless you change the job descriptions, the people you're moving into these jobs don't have the qualifications. And remember Stanton Greger's talking about saving $150,000 the first year and then $115,000 in the following years. Well, maybe if we restructured it, eliminated the assistant public works director, kept Mr. Hageman where he was at, and I believe the assistant public works director salary is $80,000, so that would be money that we'd be saving. We'd be cutting a position, but we're talking about cutting a power and light superintendent position. I think if it came down to it and Carl Hageman was our power and light superintendent, a few linemen leave, for instance, just a hypothetical case here, or if we lost a few people, if something did arise, some kind of, we'd have to, if we didn't have enough people on staff that knew the problem, how to handle the problem, I'm not so sure without Carl having time in the job, if it happened, that he'd have the expertise to handle it. So I'm not in favor of this. I won't be voting for this, and I guess we'd have to, I don't know if we even have a motion on the floor to give the manager direction, I guess. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Any other comments before we vote to, I guess we're going to give the manager direction to quit recruiting for Power Light Superintendent? Is that your...
Would you like me to rephrase the motion or proposal or whatever?
Sure, Member Stan Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. It would be to have the Borough Clerk, I believe it is 5 ordinances that involve job descriptions, to revise those accordingly and direct the manager to hire, to cease recruiting and hire Carl Hagerman as Utilities Director and Chris Cotta as Public Works Director. As I mentioned earlier, you've got the details on the record.
Do we have a second for that formal motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we all know what we're voting for. Since we're in discussion on the motion, without having a job description?
We have job description.
We did the job description. Without changing the ordinances, can we hire Mr. Hageman for this position?
May I answer that? It's my understanding that until the 5 ordinances are changed, correct, I cannot do the proposal as presented. So those 5 ordinances would have to be approved by the Assembly 3 separate readings each before we could move forward with the Utility Director position.
Got it. Any other discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what happens to the electrical department in the meantime? And do we just continue status quo, or how's this all work?
Through the Mayor, currently Scott is the acting superintendent, and in my opinion, he's doing a very good job. And what we would do was keep that in place. Carl has been basically acting as project manager and resource for Scott, and I've jumped in where necessary on certain things. So we'd keep that same arrangement in place until such time that all of the ordinances were either approved or shut down by the Assembly. And once that was done one way or the other, we would, if they're approved, we could put the Utility Director in place. If they're shot down, I'd be back to the Assembly asking, what do you want me to do now?
So I guess the answer was we have to wait till the ordinances are done? Because there is wage increases involved with this, if I'm not mistaken.
And that wouldn't happen until after the ordinances would be approved, correct?
So we're going to currently stay with the pay that we're at right now.
That would be my recommendation, is in other words, we change the current arrangement that we have right now is Scott's getting acting wages associated with our union contract. Carl is getting a bump up for helping to wind down these projects. Originally, we had an end date to that, which would be after you'd have the chance before. So in other words, if the ordinances were approved, that would end, and we'd go to the wages discussed in the original utility director proposal. And again, I can't put a utility director position in place until the assembly approves those 5 ordinances.
Member Morrell.
Okay, I have a question. So after, say, these were all approved, are you going to put them out to hire, or are you just going to hire exactly who you just said? Are you going to actually see if there's applicants that may have the qualifications that you might be looking for, even within?
I could probably answer that. The way I understand Mr. Stanton Greger's motion is that we stop recruiting. They come up with job descriptions. We draft 5, we change the 5 ordinances that describe department heads, and Mr. Hagerman is hired as the director of those the utilities.
Correct. You heard me correctly, Mr. Mayor.
So that's what we're voting on. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
No.
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes with Member Morrell and myself, Mayor Jensen, opposing. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at week or whatever it is, and then they all leave.
We don't want to do that.
I mean, for the grants?
Let's call the meeting back to order. Okay, everybody's here that was here when we took our break. We're now under new business. First item under new business is ordinance 18-01, or 2018-01. This is an ordinance amendment. Can you please, point of order? The meeting's back in order, please. Okay, new business, first reading of ordinance 2018-01, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code, section 4.28-130, senior citizen exemption, to authorize collection of an application fee in order to cover the administrative cost of processing, issuing, and monitoring of senior citizen sales tax exemption cards. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Second. Okay. Was that you, Member Mucci?
Yes.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Mucci. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Member Strand.
Thank you. I think that we should be probably charging more like $100 just because the cost is going to go up and down. That's the only problem I have with it.
So is that a motion to amend, or?
Yeah, I'll make that a motion. I move to amend the collection of a $100 application fee.
From 60 to 100?
Right.
Second.
Okay, amendment's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Greger, to change the collection fee, or application fee, from $60 to $100. Any discussion on the amendment? Member Stanton Greger.
Jody, if I may, as the finance director, how did you compute to that $60 thing? I know the person who was here asked about that earlier, but just for those listening at home and also myself, like, where did you come up with that number?
Right, so I just add it up all the time that it took my staff to process 550 cards from helping the senior fill out the application, to processing it, to processing the card. I'm first looking on the PFD website to make sure that they actually are a resident of Alaska and the physical location that they said they are. The whole process, the mailing of the card, the some of my time, I sign off on it, the card printer, the ink ribbons, the cards, some of our attorney fees, which is probably low, the camera to take their picture. It was about $25,000, and then I estimated that we'd probably have, currently we have 550 cards, actually 554 now, and we probably, if we had the waiver in place, I'm estimating we'd have about 400 cards that were paid for. So I took 25,000 divided by 400 and got $60 a card.
Thank you. One other addition, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I'll definitely be voting for this today because the second reading will be a public hearing, and I'll be looking forward to what people say. One thing I do feel is really important with this ordinance is it does have provision for those, like we talked about earlier, low income making $20K or less per year. That fee would be waived for them, of course, and I think it's that critical to take care of our most vulnerable population. So I want to really let people at home know that part is kind of wired into this.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
Jody, you said there was 440 people that paid for cards?
No. No one pays for a card right now. We have 550 cards.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I was just thinking that that was just in my mind. For some reason, it came up with that would fall right in line with how many people really would be eligible, underneath the Alaska's, seniors exemptions and assistance, through the state, which is only 89 people in this community. But
for the senior, that's for senior benefits, correct?
Right.
Anyway. The person talking earlier did say that the $20,000 was below a 2% household for the Alaska poverty guidelines. The Alaska poverty guidelines for two people is $20,290. So it's just below. That number was picked because it is in the water, wastewater, and sanitation ordinance for if someone, senior, falls below that income level for their household, they get half off on their base rate for water, sewer, and sanitation. So I thought it would be nice to keep them consistent, so then when a low-income senior comes in and says, oh, I qualify for this card, we can say, oh, you know what, then you would qualify for the, half off the base rate of your utilities. So I understand how it would be nice to also make it consistent with the Alaska poverty guideline, and we could do that too. But I think if we do change that in this ordinance, that perhaps we could also go through the water, wastewater, and sanitation ordinance and change it in there too, so it just matches up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and this is just the first reading, so I think this will probably generate some conversation. So,
any other discussion on the amendment? Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Eric? Eric, are you there?
Are you with us, Eric?
I think I heard the phone hang up here.
I might have dropped the call. Lost him.
Okay, well, we'll continue on without Member Castro.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, the amendment to raise the card fee from $60 to $100 passes with a 5-to-1 vote, with Mayor Jensen voting no. And now we're back to the main motion to implement this fee for the card for senior citizens. Any other discussion on the main motion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I had a question on our way to the meeting tonight. How come we make the seniors come in yearly to get the card, and why not just issue it to them?
So we don't. That was inaccurate statement. This is the first year that it's had a 1-year expiration, and we did it because there had been talk last year about possibly putting a fee on it, but we didn't have. That we just sort of ran out of time, and the last cards expired at the end of 2017, and I said I need to know what everyone wants to do, and there just wasn't enough time, so I said, I'll just issue the card for a year. And so we checked everyone's status to make sure they were still resident, and then we mailed them out cards so no one had to come in.
Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intent is, if it passes like it is, it would be, once you're issued a card, you wouldn't have to come in every year to get one.
Well, if you need to pay for the card, so you could do that over the phone.
Okay.
So yep, that's true.
Okay.
It would be nice if they signed something too. If they would probably need to come in and sign something, or we could mail them a form to sign that says that they make under $20,000 a year.
Okay.
But yeah, we could do it without them having to come in.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the main motion for ordinance 2018-01? I won't be voting in favor of this because of the raise in the fee. I think the $60 fee was going to cover the cost, and I consider the extra $40 to be similar to a tax. So, clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2018-01 passes in its first reading with a vote of 5 to 1, with Mayor Jensen voting no.
Mr. Mayor?
And
I have a question, just to process.
yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So we'll be reading this in a second to the next meeting, the second reading. And so if somebody wanted to come in to the city clerk or whoever and fill out an application for a ballot proposition regarding removing the senior citizen exemption, what's the process for getting an initiative on the ballot in regards to?
This is a little bit out of order.
I didn't know where to ask the question.
Maybe should we bring that up under discussion?
Sure. Okay. Yep, we can do it.
Okay, next item under new business, ordinance 2018-02, an ordinance adopting a new Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 4.80, to impose a marine passenger fee in order to address the cost incurred by the Borough for services and infrastructure rendered to cruise ships and cruise ship passengers visiting the Borough. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Mucci to adopt ordinance 2018-02 in its first reading. Discussion? Member Waller.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that was discussed today was who would collect this $5. Is that going to be something that the harbor would be tasked with? Because if it is, then there would be administration costs, to collect the money, or would that be through the chamber or Jeff or Dave Bird's operation, or what?
If I'm not mistaken, I think it was going to be collected by the finance department and put in a special fund. That was the discussion we had at the
Well, yeah, we had this
open house.
discussion at the work session, and so my department would collect it. Someone would send me I guess the harbor master would send me the, what's it called when the boat?
Manifest.
Manifest, thank you, of how many passengers were on the boat, and I would just produce an invoice and mail it to them and wait for payment. So it's not going to be that difficult. And it would go into a special revenue fund. I heard you ask about that on the radio today too, and which would be spent on items for tourism-related things and operations, and it's pretty broad, so it could cover a lot of different items. It's in the ordinance in the very end, in case you wanted to look at that.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I ask you a question? Any other discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we do pass this in the first reading, like I've said in the past, I'd certainly like to get a hold of the cruise ship companies that come to Petersburg and let them know that. Is that your time's
It's vibrating. The finger's off.
My time's up.
Yeah, it is.
Just to get a hold of the other cruise ship companies that come to Petersburg to let them know that we're entertaining this passenger fee. Dave Berg is affiliated with a couple of them, but there are certainly several that he is not affiliated with. So my intention would be to make sure that we let those companies know that we were entertaining this fee, just so in case they had any major heartburn with it, we could at least hear what some of their concerns were.
Okay. Well,
And just one other thing off of what Jeff said, it wouldn't go into effect until next January because they've already collected probably money from their passengers for this summer. So it would be nice to give them warning.
their fares have already been paid, so it'd be hard to add an additional $5. So I don't know if that's our responsibility to reach out to all the cruise ship providers or not. I mean, but maybe Viking Travel can send them a notice. I mean, it is a 6-week process. So any other discussion on this ordinance? Member Walter.
That was one of my, first, questions when they started talking about this is that, how did the tours vessel owners, feel about this, and I was assured that, they were all on board. So I really think that Jeff's correct. And I think if we do pass this in its first reading, I don't think it would be a bad idea to tell them that we're entertaining this thing, and they have a chance to comment on it. Because if they say we're not coming to town, then if that's the case, because we're getting hit everywhere around Southeast, we might want to reconsider this. Because we don't want Main Street to lose the business here just for a lousy $5 a head. On a boat that carries 30 people. I mean, so it just it wouldn't make sense. It would seem like it'd be counterintuitive. So I would maybe like to encourage maybe Dave Berg to, if we do pass this in its first reading, before the second reading, to let the tour ship companies know that we are considering this and see if they have any comments. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'm personally kind of hesitant to, I'm not opposed to the idea of a tax, but I'm kind of hesitant to vote for it. I probably will in the first reading. We'll see where it goes from there, but I would like to wait to see what happens. I know it's a different tax that's collected that is the basis for the lawsuit in Juneau, but it still could come to that, I suppose. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, I could be wrong, but I think what's going on up in Juneau is I think the visitor industry is upset of where the money is being spent. As long as we were to spend it on somewhat visitor-related ideas, whether it's Wi-Fi for the boat harborers, toilet paper for the restrooms down there. Glorianne has got a long list already of things that money could be spent on for visitor-related activities. So I think that's where they were getting tripped up in Juneau. But
right. I think it's the state head tax that they're arguing about, and it's probably the cruise ships that are, I believe, filing the suit. But anyway, any more discussion on ordinance 2018-02? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2018-02 passes unanimously in its first reading. And now the next item on the agenda is 1801. This is resolution 2018-01, a resolution in support of a repeal of application of the roadless rule to the Alaska National Forest. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Mucci, I believe, to adopt Resolution 2018-01. Discussion. Just to clarify for the people, if there's anybody listening and would think the Assembly's up to speed, the reason this came on, I asked for this to be on our agenda, is because last September, when Cindy Lagadakis was the mayor, she was in Haines, I believe, at the Southeast Conference, and she got appointed to the board of directors, so she has a voting position on the Southeast Conference board. And she knew this was going to be a topic coming up the second week in February in Juneau, the Southeast Conference, so she asked for guidance from the Assembly how she should vote, whether to vote to repeal the roadless rule or to vote to not repeal the roadless rule. Currently, our federal delegation or state delegation, Southeast Conference, I believe SEPA, and other organizations are opposing or voting to repeal the roadless rule on Tongass for many different reasons. So that's why it's on the agenda. So is there any other discussion?
What was the vote on that, Mr. Mayor? What did the vote, well, I mean, the Assembly, did they tell her to go ahead and...
That's what this vote is.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what this vote is right here. So, yeah, and Member Gregor?
Just for those listening, I won't be supporting this resolution. The roadless rule has a lot of flaws to it. It isn't a perfect rule by any stretch, but I think one thing it's done really well is protect fishermen and their livelihoods. It is really good for salmon, and I'll be glad to speak with any members of the public who feel like, because we could talk for hours on this topic, but I wanted to give my brief synopsis of why I can't support this.
One of the reasons I will be, well, there's numerous reasons why I will be voting for this, is this encumbers, ties the hands, it makes it more expensive, I guess you could call it, for development of hydro projects if you have to drill a road, build a road, access to mines. And if we're thinking our state budget is tight now, if we don't access resources so we can extract them, the roadless rule is going to be very inhibitive for that. Just for an example, the roadless rule was in place when we did the Swan Tie Intertie. It was 40% more expensive because of the roadless rule. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Any other comments? Member Mucci?
Mr. Mayor, so Southeast Conference has already voted on this and it's out the door?
No, they have a resolution, if I'm not mistaken, that they'll be voting on at the meeting in Juneau between the 12th and the 15th of next month. And Cindy Logadakis, the former mayor, is on the board of directors, so she will be voting for this. Voting with the guidance from the Assembly, either to vote to repeal the roadless rule or to support the roadless rule. And that's where the resolution came from. She asked for guidance, so here it is. Any other discussion? Member Moreau? No? Just coughing? Okay. Call the roll.
Nancy?
Yes.
Jeff?
No.
Kurt?
Nope.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
No. Okay, it fails with a 3-3 vote. So we'll give that direction to Cindy. Next item on the agenda, Resolution 2018-02, a resolution to decide where the $464,711 to finalize the municipal building project will be transferred from the true title of the resolution. I'm reading the ins and outs. So either from the general fund or from the SEPA rebate. Reading the notes here. So I entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2018-02. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Member Walther, I believe, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor, to adopt Resolution 2018-02.
A or B?
Yeah, A or B. Well, now I get it, yeah. 2 options, general fund or use the SEPA rebate. Discussion? Member Strand?
I'm in favor of using the SEPA rebate, but didn't we receive some additional information about another step requiring approval from the electric superintendent for...
Well, I will, you want me to speak to that? Yeah, I got a phone call this evening, and it was from a Power Light employee, and brought to my attention, which I'm glad that she did, refunds and rebates, it's in our ordinances, and it's 14-.16.745, and prior to taking action for any refund or rebate of unanticipated revenues, the Borough Assembly will seek a recommendation from the electric superintendent. I suppose we could ask the electric superintendent now what his thoughts are. where we could postpone this until the next meeting if we feel like we should go through the, I don't see it's that big of an issue myself, but I'm glad it was brought to our attention. Did you want to add any more to that, Member Strand?
No, I just am supporting the funds coming from the SEPA rebate.
Okay, Member Mucci.
So is that the motion? Is the motion?
The motion to adopt resolution 2018-02, then there's A or B.
Yeah, there's two parts.
So we have to decide whether it's going to be A
or B
from the general fund or B from the SEPA rebate, which was $680,000 this year. And just for the public, if it comes out of the general fund, there will still be enough money in there to keep the minimum as that were required by ordinance. And if it comes out of the SEPA rebate, the remaining $220,447 will go into the electric fund. So any other discussion? I have an opinion on this, which is probably surprising, I suppose, but I would rather see it either postponed, talking to the finance director. I believe we have till June to do this, Jody?
Yeah,
pay the debt?
I need to do it before fiscal year end.
Okay, before the end of the year. But reasoning is,
now, but
I'd rather not take it out of the general fund, but I'd like, and I don't know if we'll get an answer soon enough, but later in the meeting, we're talking about analyzing Crystal Lake Hydro. I know we have a pretty good reserve in power and light, 6 million or whatever it is, but until we get that study done, if we approve it, we don't know what kind of money we're going to need, if it's affordable, to redo the hydro at Crystal Lake. There's potential there to get increased output. So I'm kind of torn where this money should come from. Member Stanton Gregor.
Just thinking out loud, I mean, Scott, I hate to put you in this spot, but were you privy to this information? Like, you learned about this about an hour ago also? Or 2 hours ago now as we're creeping on with the evening?
Heard about it this afternoon.
Yeah.
About the recommendation of the superintendent.
Exactly. And
not to speak about it this afternoon.
Gotcha. Not to speak for you, so at any point cut me off on out of line, but that strikes me as a bit of short notice for you to come up with a recommendation that would be appropriate for the Assembly at this point. Is that a reasonable statement? Yeah. I guess echoing what Mayor Jensen said, I'd be okay postponing this for a bit to give him time to process the information he received.
But first of all, I guess we'd have to approve McMillan Jacobs to do the project. But I see what you just have here. Yeah.
So in terms of his recommendation, a couple hours isn't a lot of time to process hundreds of thousands of dollars necessarily.
Right. So would that be a motion to postpone to a certain time?
No, let her go first.
Member Strand.
I'll happily withdraw my motion if it means voting on this and it failing, and that being interpreted as the money's not going to come out of SEPA. So with the approval of my second, I'll withdraw my motion.
Nancy didn't make the motion, I'm sorry. Kurt did. Kurt made the motion and Jay seconded. But the motion itself is incomplete because we didn't say A or B.
I was just going to bring that up because we don't, the motion would have had to,
Sorry.
That's fine. So
we'll make a new motion to table it then?
Postpone to a time certain.
We'll just postpone until a later date. Till we have a chance to talk with the superintendent and then also, with what the final costs are, maybe with Crystal Lake and, with that in mind.
So I would make a motion to postpone this topic until the first meeting in February.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Mucci to postpone the discussion on this, these two ordinances, or one ordinance with A and B, till the first meeting in February, which I believe is the 5th. Steve, it looks like you.
Yeah, I do. I just, that doesn't solve the problem about getting information back from the consultants. If that's the if that's the direction the Assembly wants to do, I would suggest, postponing it until, at the latest, the first meeting in June. No, I'm asking Jody. I'm not telling.
I need I need to know before year end, so yeah, the 1st or 2nd in June, but yes.
Give us a little bit of discretion and to coordinate with the consultant. I don't know that they'll be able to get anything back that fast, but if they do, then we could bring this back as soon as we got information from them.
Member Stat Gregor?
Clerk Thompson, how should I proceed in doing that?
I was just thinking that, and I believe that we can lay it on the table. No, if we do that, it has to be taken off the table at the very next meeting.
Yeah, can I just postpone it till...
Let's just postpone it until we have more information. Yes, a date no later than June 30. How about that?
Sounds like a doable motion.
First meeting in June.
There you go. Okay.
That work for you, Jody? First meeting in June, no later. Okay.
Okay, and are you seconding that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so any discussion? Clear as mud. Okay, clerk call the roll.
Okay, this is to postpone to the first meeting in June to discuss it.
No later.
No later than. All right. Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, this discussion item, Resolution 2018-02, A or B, is postponed till no later than June, first meeting in June. Next item on the agenda, 18-009. This is anonymous comments to Borough Administration and our Assembly. Entertain a motion to require that names be submitted.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stan Gregor. The Assembly and Borough Administration has traditionally considered all suggestions, comments, or complaints that are not anonymous and have not considered those that are anonymous. The reasoning behind this policy is if the borough needs clarification or more information about the suggestion, comment, or complaint, we may contact the citizen who submitted it. Recently, the Petersburg Municipal Employees Association Union submitted comments and suggestions from their members anonymously to the borough manager regarding his open house meetings and requests of the community for their ideas on how to reduce borough expenses and or increase borough revenues. Does the Assembly want to change the past practice and consider anonymous suggestions, comments, and complaints? So I would assume if you voted for this, we do consider the anonymous. Does that make sense? Remember?
Well, the motion was to require names be submitted.
Okay. Require names. So if we vote yes, we still are requiring names to be submitted with suggestions. Discussion. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't able to go to the first one that we had, but I have read all the suggestions and Steve's answers and the ones from the Petersburg Municipal Employees Association. I thought it was great. I like hearing from folks, and whether it's their union representative or whoever, I enjoyed reading that stuff. And I think you need to have ownership in these suggestions. You just can't throw something up on the wall and say, yeah, and I'm not going to own up to it. I think you need to, if you think that the best way to save money for the city is to close the dump down, you should put your name up there and see what the consequences there are of those suggestions. I think ownership is great in this process.
Any member Stan Gregor?
Myself, I've kind of gone back and forth on this thing. If someone is, maybe afraid of reprisals or any number of things where they felt like they couldn't come forward and own their name to it, I understand that. That makes sense to me. But the flip side of it, though, and I can't get away from this, is for the sake of argument, let's say a person had a vendetta against anybody, let's say a borough employee. They could write anonymous letter after anonymous letter alleging false allegations against the person. There's really no accountability at that point, and it can truly hurt someone's life and career that way. And that's therefore, I think, when the dust all settles, you have to own it. Put your name on it. I think it's the only safe way to proceed and keep things intact, I guess, or keep the integrity of it all. So I'll be voting for this tonight.
Member Morrell?
I understand what you're saying with putting a name to it, but there was a name attached, right? There was the president's name attached to it. And I think that when it comes to employees being able to speak their mind, it's a little bit different than just the public. You can't tell me that you're not going to get at least mean mugged by your boss if you tell them that, basically what to do when you start micromanaging management. As an employee, I don't see anything. This isn't a complaint. They're not asking for action items. They're just simply wanting to voice their opinion from an employee standpoint, and I don't see anything wrong with it, considering it was attached. There was a name attached to it, and there was a group attached to it, and you're not making, like I said, allegations or wanting any action item. You're just wanting to participate in the conversation.
Member Strand.
I agree with the idea that anonymous suggestions probably don't carry as much. I don't like anonymous stuff, so I don't think it should be changed. Perhaps we should be devoting more attention to the retaliation. The reason employees want to be anonymous is because they fear reprisals. That might be the thing we need to be looking into. What's causing this fear of being retaliated against?
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand, small town, everybody knows everybody else. I would certainly encourage anybody who had a suggestion and didn't want to go public with it to give one of us a call. I'll write it down in the piece of paper and I'll put my name on it and ask about it. That's an easy thing to do. I understand small town politics and small town issues, and yeah, I'd certainly be happy to put something up on the board for somebody if they were afraid of getting reprisals from their workplace.
I would like, if any comments to come forward, need to have a name on them. So anything anonymous I wouldn't consider. So, Member Strand?
That Justin has put his name on it, taking responsibility for it. So while the individual thing, he says the individual suggestions have come from people that aren't he is putting his name on it, taking credit for it, so taking responsibility.
Well, yeah, I guess that's not really his ideas if he's putting other people's ideas forward, so you don't know where they came from. Just like if an assembly member, and this is in my opinion, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of on the topic, wants to bring forth a ordinance or a resolution or something for a group, I think you have to put the group's name on it. You have to say where you got the information, share that information with the rest of the assembly members, so everybody's using the same info to make their decisions. So I think the anonymous suggestions shouldn't be used for this. And any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, for Steve. Steve, was there any reasonable suggestions, that came out of the anonymous thing, where people felt emboldened to be able to say what they really wanted to say, or was it more just, was it valuable information?
Through the mayor? I think any comments are valuable for many different reasons, even those that, don't amount to us being able to implement stuff. So, I think the ideas put forward by employees and through Justin have merit just for the fact that, there's stuff that we need to look into or can look into. The challenge with pure anonymous stuff is, as Jay mentioned, which people will be emboldened and start sending stuff in that aren't necessarily true. And I don't think that's the case with any of these ideas. But then staff has to research every one of those. So it turns into an absolute, problem for us in having to basically research anonymous stuff over and over and over again when we don't necessarily have the right contacts to figure out, is this a real complaint or not? Somebody puts their name to it, and we get 3 ideas, or 3 comments, I should say, more so than ideas, and we look and go, okay, this is getting frivolous, then we kind of have an idea how to handle that in the future. These ideas that came from the employees, some are better than others. I don't put in that category of being frivolous. But I'm very aware of how the Assembly has wanted to treat this in the past, and I didn't want to go out on a limb and say, we're going to accept these on behalf of the employees through Justin. So, again, it's not a reflection on the ideas that I asked that this be discussed. It's more a reflection on how does the Assembly want this handled going forward, because this comes up frequently. We get anonymous letters today, and they're not dealt with.
We should be consistent.
And we need, consistency is pretty important here. So, I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, you did. Okay. Any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Kurt?
Yes.
Nancy?
I'm trying to understand what exactly we're voting for here. We are voting on this suggestion we got, or is this a general overall anonymous acceptance of anonymous?
If you vote yes for this motion that we're discussing, they have to put their name on it.
Right, who
or
does?
It's not considered anybody that sends any comments in.
So this isn't going forward into the future, this includes this, these suggestions from Justin?
This was in the past, was our position on this, and we're verifying if we want to keep moving forward, that people have to put their name on their suggestions or they don't count for anything. So a yes vote continues our practices from the past where people have to put their name on it. A no vote makes it so anybody can send something in and without a name on it, and it gets considered.
Right, and I don't define this as a typical anonymous submission.
That's not what we're voting on, that particular issue.
We're voting yes is to continue with the anonymous definition?
To make it so you have to have your name on it.
This wouldn't be okay in the future. This wouldn't be okay in the future.
In the future or now?
Starting now. I'm not sure I understand, Member Strand, I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to vote no.
Brandy?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Eric? Oh, sorry.
You get it. You voted for it too.
Has Kurt voted?
I voted first.
4-2 vote? Okay, so...
Correct.
Okay. Anonymous comments will not be considered. Okay. Reappointment of Petersburg Southeast Alaska Solid Waste Authority representatives and alternate. I'd like to get Assembly approval to appoint Public Works Director Hagerman as Petersburg's representative to CSWA and Assistant Public Works Director Cotta as Petersburg's alternate to CSWA. The appointments are for a 3-year term and will expire January 31st of 2021. So we need a motion by Assembly member, and then we will vote on these appointments.
So moved.
Is there okay? Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhuter to make these appointments for alternate and voting member, I guess would be called. Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, well, Mr. Hagerman and Mr. Cotta are on the CSWA board. The next item is Blind Slough Hydroelectric Project. I would entertain a motion to approve this analysis of our project by McMillan, Jacobs and Associates.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made by Member Bucci, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. And what this is, for the people listening, if there are, the Power and Light Department is seeking Assembly approval to enter into professional services contract with McMillan Jacobs Associates to perform a facility condition assessment and develop a capital improvement plan for the Blind Slough Hydroelectric Facility for an estimated amount of $159,432,000. So for the people listening and in the audience, that's what this is for. And then, I can't remember, Steve, and I didn't find it in the text here anywhere. This could be broken down into two expenditures.
And, sorry, I'm having a hard time. It likes to twist. Yes.
I've got it. Hang on.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
I personally would suggest approving both of them, because without doing both of them, you're not going to get you'll get the analysis of the hydro project out there, our turbine and the pin stock and the dam and everything else, but you're not going to get the recommendation what it would take, so I don't think you're going to get the associated cost that would be required to do the work.
Yeah, the big step after the initial condition assessment report is the alternative development and evaluation. And it's my recommendation that we get that done, because it's not just what the condition is, but it's like, here's what some recommendations on what we should do or can do, and some cost estimates. The next step after that is the capital improvement plan and then project administration. Those two steps potentially you don't need to do. It kind of depends on what happens in all of the stuff leading up to that. So, that piece is, I think that's roughly about $50,000, give or take, right there. So, if the Assembly wanted to break it up, you could, but clearly, like you're saying, Mayor, getting through the alternative development and evaluation is pretty important to us.
Member Stan Gregor.
For those listening at home, these people know hydro. I'm going to vote for this as is all the way. I think, as we've talked about, Blind Slough has been, it's overdue, and I'm excited to get moving on this so we can see what to do next. And these are the people to tell us how to go about this.
Yeah, I think this McMillan Jacobs would be a good group to hire for consulting on this. They're the ones that SEPA hired to do the hydro site analysis of the sites from Metlakatla to Cake, and so they're aware of what's out at Crystal Lake. And I think we have potential to get some more output out of it, from what Mort McMillan was saying. Kurt?
One comment, Mr. Mayor, and that is, typically when we do these things, they said the estimate amount, not to exceed $159,000. We don't have that word "exceed" in here. Are we in danger of this costing us more? By leaving the language the way it is?
No, we can have the language changed if you like. I also, the big part is we want that first section done, and that leads into the second part that we don't even necessarily know if we need to spend that yet. So if the Assembly wishes to have not to exceed language in here, I would make a motion to that, and we can make sure that happens that way before any contracts are signed.
It may seem like a trivial thing, but, it might also protect us from going, more than 159.
Yeah. You caught something that, unless Carl or Scott, who were the other two that looked at this, unless they caught it, I missed that.
So does someone want to make a motion to...
I'll make a motion that we add the word not to exceed $159,000 after facility for an estimated amount of not to exceed $159,432.
Is there a second for that amendment?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Member Walhooter, seconded by Member Stan Gregor to add the wording in it not to exceed the amount of $159,432. So that makes perfectly good sense. Any discussion on the amendment? Why don't we call the roll on the amendment first, Debbie? Let's just vote on the action as amended.
As amended, okay, we'll do. Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes. Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Okay, it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. The next item on the agenda is Mountain View Manor Food Services is requesting financial help with an unexpected funding shortfall in their budget. And earlier this evening, Karen Schrammick, I believe she's the president of Mountain View Food Services, explained it, and they're asking for $4,000 until their next grant cycle comes through. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the request.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Strand, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor to approve the $4,000 to Mountain View Food Services. Member Stanton Gregor?
Mr. Amick, thank you so much for your patience waiting through to the end of the meeting for us to discuss this, so you can wait and see where it plays out. I'll definitely be voting for this. $4,000 is $4,000, and it's really dropping the bucket for what you contribute to the community, and I'm glad your grant will be coming through in February, and I'll definitely be voting yes.
Member Ritchie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was on the phone with Karen today, kind of trying to sort this thing out, and sounds like it's not as simple as a $4,000 kind of gift or something. It sounds like there's some, I guess the bigger question I have is Mountain View Manor Food Services a function of the borough? It's not. Okay.
Okay, so any other discussion on the, one question I would have for the finance director or somebody, where would the money come from, Jody?
So I was looking in our general fund contingency fund, which we budgeted this year $85,000, and we've spent close to $17,000 of the 85. So we have room in our contingency fund within the general fund for this expenditure.
Okay, just curiosity, I'm going to vote in favor of this. It's, might be needing these meals one
And
of these
in
days.
case you were wondering, also, usually annually during, they usually had been applying for grants, and the borough would give them $12,000 each year. So.
Oh, okay, thanks for that info. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Karen, we talked, you mentioned earlier today that the meals are $4.92 a meal, and we're about average. So is there a chance that the board could maybe charge more for those meals for people who aren't associated with the manor?
That aren't associated.
Well, like, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So I've been up there a couple times just chatting, and I've had dinner a few times. It's the cheapest meal in town. Is there a way to maybe charge people like me who come up there more money?
Well, guests are supposed to be $7.50 and children are $3.50.
Okay.
So if they're a guest.
Okay.
Haven't put any guidelines on that. The grant is written that.
Good job.
The grant is written that it's suggested donation of $5. So I think what people need to know is that if you're financially well off but you would love to come up there, you can donate $10 instead of $5.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I should have asked you to step to the microphone so that people could hear it. But any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, under communications, I do have, I guess, a communication. I should have done it on my mayor's report, but I was called by the district ranger, Mr. Zimmerman, to come over and visit, and I did, and I had the clerk forward the information to all of you that districts in South, right around Petersburg and Wrangell, they're going to have some public comments on the actions that they want to take on the improvements for, cabins, and without the piece of paper in front of me, I can't really remember what it is, but he'll probably come to a future meeting, and I'll have it at the next meeting in a more explainable format. So we will be working with them, I hope. Any other communications? Seeing none. Assembly discussion items. Recognitions. Are there any recognitions? Member Bucci.
I have one, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank the Harbor Department for replacing one of the benches in front of the Harbor Master's office. I've been kind of running around trying to at least get a bench out there so people can come and sit. A lot of people like to go and sit at the harbor and just look at the North Harbor and look down there. And there's some other plans that the Harbor Department's got going on, but this was an easy fix, and I just wanted to say I appreciate them doing that.
Any other recognitions by staff or by any of the assembly members? Next item on the agenda is discussion on the Public Safety Advisory Board. Member Mucci asked to have this on the agenda this evening, so Member Mucci, your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Like I said, originally, my intention was to have some discussion up here regarding disbanding the Public Safety Advisory Board, and I did talk to all the members, and mentioned what I was thinking about since they haven't met since August of 2015. But in the meantime, with the police chief moving on, retiring, this might be a good opportunity for the Public Safety Advisory Board to weigh in and help us out on this process. They've all got a few good ideas, and I think it'd be worthwhile to get those guys together and help Steve out if he can.
More than happy if that's what these
What's can I ask the clerk, what is the membership on the the Public Safety Advisory Board now? How many member board is it, and how many members are currently on the board?
It's 7, and we have 3.
Okay, and they haven't, so that
We
would,
haven't met since August of 2015.
so they would not, are they required to have a quorum as well?
Of course, and they're an elected board and everything.
Right. So they couldn't meet without, so another one of those things where people don't participate in the, well, those 3 did, they put their names in, so thank them for doing that.
It's true they can't have a meeting of their own, but they could probably still come in and have a meeting with the manager and talk about recruitment of the chief.
Member Strand?
They could have a meeting, right, but without a quorum, they can't take any action.
Correct.
Okay, so, yeah, maybe their input would be good to have, so could you ask them to do that, please?
Absolutely.
Debbie? And you wanted to add something to the discussion items earlier, Jeff, or do you want to?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm surprised I didn't forget, but I had a note for you and everything. Okay, well, if there's no other discussion, then that brings us to a motion to adjourn. So move. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, say aye. Meeting is adjourned at 8:14.